clear that they intend to extinguish all prospects for Palestinian freedom, statehood, and self-determination. Under this government, the Israeli military has accomplished several alarming records. A new high in the killing of innocent Palestinian civilians, a new peak in demolishing homes, a new height in Palestinian imprisonment, a new level of disrespect and intrusion into Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest mosque for 2 billion Muslims worldwide. In just 1 week since the bombardment of Gaza commenced, Israel has dehumanized Palestinians by labeling them as human animals. They advocated for destroying the lives of over 2 million people residing in Gaza. They seized all essential resources, including medicine, food, water, and electricity. They internally displaced 25% of Gaza's population. It caused the death of over 2,000 civilians, with over 50 of them being women and children. Injured over 8,000 Palestinians, demolished hundreds of buildings, and wiped out numerous neighborhoods. Israel is continuing its plan to force a mass displacement of over 2 billion Gaza residents to the Sinai Desert in Egypt, resulting in a third catastrophe, third Nakba, following the 1948 and 1967 catastrophe. Here I would say to the Israelis, we as Palestinians have only two options: either to live above our land, free, with dignity, or to die under it, and we have got no third option. I would like to, in this occasion, two messages. The first message is directed to the United States government and the UK government. The second will be to the Muslim community in the UK. For the United States and our government here in the UK, I say, I consider your support for Israel, which has committed numerous atrocities and war crimes. Such actions to continue militarily take control over Palestinian lands, their future, will only lead to more wars, more casualties, and greater instability in the entire region. For our Muslim community here in the UK, especially the youth, hear me clearly, please. I want to emphasize that the Jewish people worldwide are not our adversaries, they are our enemies. The Jewish community in the UK comprises our friends and colleagues. They are responsible for the Palestinian struggle. Our adversaries are the Zionist movement, which has exploited and misused the Jewish faith for further their inhumane and fascist ideology.
Palestine! 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 Palestine!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Palestine will be free!
From the river to the sea!
Hello, I'm Chris Williamson. I was the MP for Derby North until the... Thank you for that welcome. I was the MP for Derby North until 2019, but I was forced out of the Labour Party because of my outspoken support for the Palestinian people and for my criticism of the Zionist entity. Since that time, I've continued to fight for Palestine, and I currently present the weekly programme called Palestine Declassified on Press TV, and it'll be on today at 5:30. And if you miss it, you can watch it on Rumble and on Twitter. But you know, the heartfelt and reasonable plea to say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Incredibly, Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, has written out to every single chief constable in this country to suggest that such a phrase should be treated as a criminal offence. The political class in this country has lost their mind. They seem to be working as agents for the Zionist entity, but they're supposed to be our representatives, not the representatives of Israel. And we need to raise our voice to say that in a democracy, you represent the British people, not the Israeli people. And then we had the appalling spectacle of the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, when he was asked about the Israeli plan to basically impose a medieval siege on Gaza, cutting off water, cutting off energy. This is expressly forbidden by Article 54 of the Geneva Convention. But what did Sir Keir Starmer say? This man, who was apparently a human rights lawyer, said that Israel had the right to do that. No, they do not. It is against international law. It is against all norms of decency. What we're seeing here is a genocide, or an attempted genocide, against the Palestinian people. And they're being aided and abetted by the corporate media who are trying to manufacture consent for a genocide against the Palestinian people by repeating lurid headlines which are plain, flat-out lies. When the resistance fighters broke out of the concentration camp that is Gaza and tried to reclaim what is Palestine, we heard these lurid tales about raping, about beheading babies. These are all complete and total lies, and yet we see many in the mainstream media and politicians continuing to repeat these lies. Anthony Blinken, when he met the revolting spectacle on Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, repeated that appalling calumny. It's an absolute outrage. And then we hear that the prisoners of war that were captured by the Palestinian resistance fighters referred to as hostages. Well, I'll tell you about hostages, because what the Israeli regime does on a routine basis is they take hostages, they take Palestinians hostages. And at the moment there are 1,117 Palestinian people languishing in Israeli dungeons on administrative detention. That is a hostage situation. And what about the 2 million plus people living in Gaza? Are they being held hostage in the concentration camp, which is Gaza? And you know, there are 700 Palestinian children who are arrested and detained every single year. What an absolute outrage, what a disgrace. And what a shame it is that our mainstream media and our politicians are continuing to support this rogue entity, the Israeli regime. But you know, we've already heard, haven't we, today, that Israel is in breach of international law. Yes, they are in breach of international law. It's Israel which is in breach of international law, not Palestine. Let that message be loud and clear. And Adrian said that it was almost inevitable that the Palestinian resistance would break out of the concentration camp that is Gaza. I think it was absolutely inevitable, because what we've seen is Israel, since it was established in 1948, waging a campaign of oppression and terror against the Palestinian people. And then they went further, didn't they, in 1967, and occupied yet more land, and they're still not satisfied, and they are still evicting and throwing out of their homes Palestinian people on a routine basis. It's absolutely disgraceful and shameful, and we should always speak out against it. But I say it was absolutely inevitable, because every single peaceful attempt to try to get a reasonable solution from Oslo to the Great March of Return spurned by the Israeli regime. And on the Great March of Return, what did we see? We saw Israeli snipers shooting peaceful Palestinian protesters with exploding bullets, so that when people were wounded, they had very little chance of recovering from that wound. And it would almost inevitably mean that if they were shot in their arm or their legs, that they would have to have their arm or leg amputated. And we saw them as well celebrating the fact that they were killing medics, they were killing journalists. This is all, of course, against international law, but they seem to be impervious. And we need to make sure that we get the message out to our politicians, who are absolutely useless on this issue. As I've already said, their job is to represent us and to stand up for international law, and they should be demanding that Israel complies with international law, and they should be imposing sanctions at the very minimum on the Israeli regime, not as the United States are doing, sending aircraft carriers into the Mediterranean. Are we going to see US Air Force planes strafing and bombing the Palestinian people? Isn't it bad enough supplying the arms and the ammunition so that the Israeli military can wreak absolute carnage on the Palestinian people? Isn't that enough? Surely, if you believe in the so-called rules-based system, if it applies, then it should apply to the Palestinian people, and it should certainly apply to Israel, and they should be called to account for their war crimes. And what are we seeing Israel doing? Reports that they're going to cut off the internet to Gaza. Why are they doing that? Because they don't want the world to witness the genocide that they are trying to perpetrate against the Palestinian people. And we need to speak out as loudly as we can against that. But I'm sick to death of the mainstream media referring to the Palestinian resistance as militants and terrorists. They are freedom fighters. The terrorists and the militants of the illegal settlers for the Israeli occupation fighters. They're the militants. They're the terrorists. So let that message go out from Derby today, that we say enough is enough. Long live Palestine. Long live Gaza.